Hello and welcome back to Advance Wars Horizons. Today we'll be taking on Mount Rex. We'll be going with Mars on this one. On this map there's a couple of airports and there are these huge mountains spanning through the centre of the map. We'll be relying on air units heavily on this one. Early on, we just capture the properties around our base. And before we can get out any bombers, we'll need a few tanks just to deal with any anti-air. Our first opponent is Jonathan, and he builds an anti-air first. We'll get out one copter here just to support our tank going for the HQ. And this anti-air is rather brave, it moves straight up next to our tank. We're not able to attack the anti-air just yet though, because he did build a tank of his own to defend it. What I did manage to find after a few playtests of this map was the little trick that we can do here. So by positioning our units as such, the anti-air will go and hit the capturing infantry, and then the APC will run away, the tank as well. We've got an infantry to join our weakened infantry so we don't lose any units, and we build a tank from our base to deal with the anti-air. And then on our following turn, we're able to position our infantry just out of range of both the anti-air and the tank. And we're in position to take the HQ. Jonathan does build an artillery. And it's going to sit itself on the HQ. But the combination of our copter and tank will be able to get rid of it. And Jonathan builds missiles after that, so there are no units actually defending the HQ right now. With the artillery out the way, we start the capture on the HQ. This infantry just needs to run away, and we remove the anti-air. Now that we've dealt with Jonathan, we can start making a move for this airport that he just captured. In this hack, the benefits of capturing a HQ have been slightly nerfed. If you're playing against multiple COs, you don't take all their properties after capturing the HQ. So while they did just capture that airport, we'll have to capture it ourselves. We're able to get a bit of charge from that APC, and then we finish Jonathan off. We'll want to grab that Comteer, as the boost will help us in a few engagements we're going to see soon. At this point I am thinking about buying a copter, but for what we need to do I decide to hold and just wait for a bomber instead. Now that we've put the T-copter into repair mode, it goes and parks itself on Nazir's airport. This will drain funds from him and prevent any copters from being built as well. I do make a few saves in this playthrough of this map, because this is one of the more challenging ones, but I don't actually end up using the saves. And by that I mean I don't actually quit the map and then reload. I thought I might need them just in case we make some critical mistakes that cause a reset, but never ended up needing them. And here we may as well just refuel our T-copter. It has nothing really important to do at this turn. We do want to get the forward airport as soon as possible, but there are a few units running around here from Nazir, so we'll need to handle them first before we start a capture on that airport. Remember to cap our Comteer first. And thankfully the AI has got the aggressive behaviour, so we can easily get rid of this tank. I could interrupt the cap here with my infantry, but I don't want chip on them, so we'll leave that to the vehicles. And here we get our first bomber of many. Now, we talked a bit about Jonathan and Nazir, but our third opponent is Wolf. Wolf is positioned far away from us, so there's not much we can do about Wolf just yet, but Wolf will be sending copters towards us, and the units that are built from Wolf's base will eventually meet up with the army of the green team. and then when they're together it can be quite troublesome to safely deal with units, as there's going to be plenty of anti-air and tanks running around. You'll need a combination of some strong air and ground units if you want to take a more traditional approach in taking on this map. But with what I have in mind, we'll be doing a little backdoor on Wolf's HQ first. See, he sends his army down to meet up with the Green Army and leaves the Yellow HQ unguarded. Doing an attack on Nazir's HQ can be very troublesome, so we'll leave that for last. And in this map in particular, it's a very good idea to get Nazir to use his small power. He will be able to buy mechs from his cities, but you've got to remember that he still has to pay for these. That means more money being spent on mechs and fewer units like anti-air being built as a result. And with the way the map's laid out, having mechs spawning from mountains and crossing them is not that troublesome, because once you've taken Jonathan's base, you can greet them with some units like artillery and infantry and clear them up. And I'm sure you'd much rather deal with that than a bunch of Nazir's units gaining +2 move and a bunch of extra damage. And we've managed to capture this airport. We'll be able to get some bombers out from here, and then they'll only be 1 or 2 turns away from their destination. We do have 3 anti-air and a tank coming our way. We do join a tank to afford 1 more bomber, and then we've got to pull back this turn. As you might be able to see, there's quite a few anti-air being built, so trying to go for Nazir's HQ I found is very tricky. Even if you're able to build bombers, it's going to be quite hard to protect them and capturing infantry on the HQ. With a different CO, maybe like Eva or perhaps Bomber Barbara, you may be able to stun the anti-airs and somehow capture the HQ of Green first, but I did try that in a previous attempt, but it was very tricky, so going with this strategy with Mars seemed much more reliable. Now here we've got our super ready. I plan on sending some units over to the left and then sneaking them through. That way we can go to get Yellow's HQ first. But here we don't quite have enough movement. We will be using our super, but we'll be using it defensively to get rid of these anti-air and get into a position where we can sneak through on a following turn. And we do have this one city down here, so we'll buy an infantry and then use our super. Now, because we've used Mars's power, we're not able to get rid of the anti-air in one shot, but a combination of a tank and a bomber clears it, and then we can put a copter in front of our tank to protect it. We're able to remove this other anti-air as well. As we see, the copter doesn't quite do it, so got to use our bomber. We've also managed to get Nazir into range to use his normal power again. And now at this point he is starting to march over the mountains, so we'll need to welcome him with some units of our own. We've also managed to get Wolf into range to use Wolf's power instead of a super later on. So this turn worked out fairly well for us. Now over here we're in a bit of a tricky spot because there's two anti-airs, one of them's on a comm tower and we don't want to risk getting our bombers injured. Thankfully we have some tanks lying around, so we're able to use them to block this point for now. We do want to keep a copter here just so it scares away any units from piling up next to our potential escape route towards Yellow's HQ. And we do have a wolf copter incoming, so we'll need to prepare an anti-air for that. We do save our money here for this turn, because either way we wouldn't have been able to reach the copter. Now on this turn, we're ready to go. There's only one anti-air threatening our air units. The missile is kind of blocking us, but there's plenty of tiles that we can put our units on just outside of its range. Then we can make a break for it on the following turn. Here we're able to weaken any units that could potentially threaten the T-copter. We do need to keep an eye on charge. We're not too concerned about Wolf's power just yet. If possible, we'd like to get Nazir to use his little power again. And we do manage to get him into a range where he will use it again. Now, because he is going to build a mech from these cities, we do need to use our T-copter just to block that city from producing any annoying mechs, which will stop our tank from dying. The only unit threatening our T-copter is a 4 HP recon, so we're not worried about that. Now, things are getting a bit scary as Nazir is sending a huge wave of infantry and mechs over our mountains. This, coupled with the air units coming from Wolf, means we're going to be in a bit of a rough spot, and we do end up losing a few units. I can't afford to invest too heavily into defending the base on the right, as we need all our money to be put into air units to support our attempts on the HQ. We've managed to give Wolf another power. It's good to get these out of the way while he's got no units that really threaten us. Saves us having to deal with a super later on. With our air units safely in the mountains, we pull back with the tank and anti-air as they no longer have any support. I did make a little mistake here and I got a copter killed. I kind of forgot how powerful Nazir's copters can be. Thankfully, Wolf moved that copter right into range of our anti-air. Now, I was planning on killing these missiles and then sending our bomber up north, but unfortunately Wolf has built a fighter. I've mentioned this on previous maps, but in situations like this where you're going for a fast HQ clear, it can be a very good idea to pick off missiles even if they seem useless, as this makes the AI build more missiles from the HQ. Most indirects aren't very good at defending HQs when compared to direct units, especially missiles who can't even hit infantry trying to cap HQs. Now, we've managed to get Nazir into a position where he'll be using his power again. And we'll be using our super. This way we can drop our infantry in range of the HQ. I make the decision to sacrifice a bomber to bait the fighter away from the HQ. Here we're just thinking about how to defend this little area from all these infantry. Now, back over at Wolf's HQ, we'll be positioning our bombers and the copter in range to start attacking any units that get built from the bases. Here, I forgot about the property that Nazir captured near my airport, so he's able to get a strike on my tank. And I did accidentally leave an anti-air in range of his mech as well. So we do make a few mistakes here and there. Luckily, nothing too damaging to our strategy, and we don't need to take any resets, even though I do make a few saves in this run. We've managed to bait the fighter away from our attempt on the HQ. And you can see Wolf's desperately sending units back to his HQ, but it's a bit late for that, my friend. And as you see, because we killed his missiles, the AI dictates that it needs the missiles on the field, so it builds the useless missiles instead of something like a tank. We could have stopped pretty much anything he built with 2 bombers and a copter, but with this we're able to just keep our air units where they are, and then they can make a move on the green HQ afterwards. While Nazir has his power active, it's a good time to kill off the T-copters. This way we can get some free charge without charging his own meter. He'll also need to buy some T-copters to replace them. We check Wolf's power, and he's not quite got his power back yet, so we can keep our air units where they are. Now at this point we are kind of losing control of our airport. We've got an anti-air staring us down and plenty of other units swarming it as well, so this will be the last bomber we're able to get out from here. Wolf's infantry are also blocking our bomber in a bit, so it can't move out fully and position itself to attack the green HQ, but we'll be getting rid of Wolf this turn, so all of his units will disappear. And with Wolf out of the way, we are in position to take on Nazir's HQ. We've got 2 bombers and a copter coming from the north, and some other air units from the south, so we'll do a bit of a pincer strike. This anti-air is also out of position as well. Here I was considering leaving the missiles alive, that way they can block the base. But ultimately I just decided to kill it off. That way, if Nazir is going to build any units, he might just build another useless missiles again. With all of Wolf's units disappearing, we're now in a much better position to defend our base as well. We've only got to deal with Nazir's units now. Things are still not looking great though. But this turn we're able to clean up the copter and put some damage on the infantry. Now at this point we've manipulated Nazir into using his little power a few times in a row. But now we want him to get his super, or at least overcharge him so he won't use his normal power anymore. It would be rather annoying if he suddenly spawned infantry and mechs from near his base and that interrupted our HQ capture, so we'll overcharge him so he can't use his normal power, and then we'll defeat him before he gets his super. This brave little recon takes an attack on my copter. But at this point it doesn't really matter. We've got so many units in position to take on the HQ, but a bit of chip here and there isn't going to matter. Unfortunately, our bomber is going to run out of fuel. I think if anyone ever wants to refine this strategy, definitely be a bit more careful about how many moves you're doing with the bombers. Thinking back to some of the movements in earlier turns, there were definitely a few times where I moved a bomber a couple of extra tiles when I didn't need to, so you could potentially save that bomber from dying. Here I'm just planning things out if we can actually get our super or not. So we'll go for the most expensive unit, the missiles. And then if we use our anti-air, we should be able to get the rest of our charge for our super. We do sacrifice the anti-air, and with that we're able to get our super. Now that we've got our super, we're in a very good position to get our power score. Because we're able to move all of our units again, we're able to build units from our bases, move them away, and then build infantry later on from those same bases on the same turn. This is also very nice for our technique score as well. Here we've cleaned up most of the forces attacking the base where Jonathan used to be. Now that we've got things under control, we can just build a few units for our technique score. Give one last salute to that poor bomber as he crashes valiantly just outside of the enemy HQ. Now on this turn we're in position to capture the HQ on the following turn. We'll back up a bit just to prevent any further casualties. At this point, I'm fairly certain we had our power score secured, but we just build a few units just to guarantee it on the following turn. And because we've secured the HQ cap, we may as well even unblock some of the production facilities like the airport. That way our fighter will have something to kill on the following turn, just in case we didn't get our power score this turn. Here we've baited in all of Nazir's units that we could in the middle of the map. Just to absolutely guarantee we got our power score, we do kill a few units here and there. With some luck rolls, we're able to kill the anti-air as well. This turn we've definitely got our power score. We don't quite kill the 1 infantry and tank. But after doing one last check, we build more units for security of our technique score. And with that, we're done with this map in 23 days. Now, with this map out of the way, we're approaching the final map. So thank you for joining me on this playthrough, and I'll see you in the next one. But for now, peace.